Red and blue lights cut through the late afternoon like a wound opening in the air, and in that instant, Daniel Carter felt the fragile order of his life threaten to collapse once again. The road was quiet, the sky heavy with clouds that looked like they had forgotten how to rain, and his old sedan shuddered as he pulled over, as if it already knew this moment would cost more than money. Daniel's hands trembled on the steering wheel, not because he feared the ticket, but because he was already calculating how many meals he would have to skip to pay for it, how many nights he would lie awake pretending not to hear his son's stomach growl. This was how his life worked now, measured in small losses, quiet sacrifices, and the constant hope that tomorrow might hurt a little less. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of compassion in a broken world, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this travel farther when we carry them. Together, Daniel Carter had not always lived this way. Once, his name had been spoken in rooms full of light and laughter, his future mapped out with confidence. He had been a young mechanical engineer with steady work, a modest house, and a wife whose laughter filled every corner of their lives. Then illness arrived without warning, swift and merciless, draining savings, time, and strength, until one quiet morning it took his wife away and left Daniel standing alone in a hospital hallway with a toddler clinging to his leg and no idea how to breathe without her. From that day forward, Daniel became two people at once, a grieving husband and a father who could not afford to fall apart. He learned to pack lunches with shaking hands, to braid messy hair for school picture days, to smile through exhaustion so his son would not learn fear too early. That afternoon, he had been rushing back from a double shift at the garage, grease still under his fingernails, because he had promised his son Noah that he would be there before sunset. Promises mattered in their house. Promises were the thin threads holding everything together. He had not noticed the speed limit drop or the patrol car waiting like fate at the edge of the road. When the officer approached, Daniel stepped out slowly, shoulders heavy, eyes already apologizing for a life that seemed forever out of alignment. The officer was named Emily Harris, though Daniel did not know that yet. She had been on the force for 8 years, long enough to recognize the difference between recklessness and desperation. She saw it immediately in the way Daniel stood, in the way his eyes flicked toward the back seat where a child's backpack lay, frayed and held together with tape. As she began writing the ticket, her pen paused more than once, not from hesitation about the law, but from the quiet weight of curiosity and concern. She noticed the cracked phone screen, the worn shoes, the way Daniel kept glancing at the sky as if praying the day would slow down. As she asked routine questions, Daniel explained his situation without drama, without self-pity, as if it were simply the weather of his life. He mentioned his son waiting at home, the sitter charging extra if he was late, the long hours, the way time always seemed to slip through his fingers. Emily listened, really listened, the way few people in uniforms were expected to. Something in her chest tightened, a familiar ache she had learned to live with since losing her own father years earlier, a man who had raised her alone after her mother left. She recognized the posture of someone who never rested, who lived permanently braced for impact. As she finished the paperwork, she looked at Daniel, not as a violation number, but as a human being standing at the edge of exhaustion. She made a light remark, half joking, half sincere, about how if circumstances were different, she might have written something other than a citation, a comment that startled both of them with its warmth. Daniel managed a small, tired smile, the kind that appeared rarely these days, and for a brief moment, the world felt less sharp. Emily handed him the ticket, but something had already shifted. She returned to her car and sat there longer than necessary, watching Daniel drive away, his taillights disappearing into the dimming road. She told herself it was nothing, just another stop, but she could not shake the feeling that she had just brushed against a story still unfolding, one that mattered. Daniel arrived home late, breathless with guilt, but Noah greeted him with unfiltered joy, wrapping his small arms around Daniel's legs as if nothing else in the world existed. That night, as Daniel lay awake listening to his son sleep, the weight of the ticket pressed on his chest. He wondered how many more signs the universe would send before something finally broke, or changed. Days passed, then weeks. Daniel paid the fine in painful installments, selling a few tools he loved to make it happen. He did not expect to see Officer Emily Harris again, but life has a way of looping back on itself. One rainy evening, the garage where Daniel worked partnered with a local community safety event organized by the police department. Daniel volunteered for the overtime, because overtime was survival. When he looked up from under a lifted car and saw Emily standing there, clipboard in hand, the air seemed to pause. They recognized each other instantly, though neither said much at first. Over the course of the evening, they found themselves talking in brief moments between tasks, sharing pieces of their lives without fully realizing they were doing so. Emily spoke of her long shifts, the loneliness that crept in after the badge came off, the pressure of being strong all the time. Daniel spoke of Noah, of bedtime stories and burned dinners, of how love could be both the heaviest and lightest thing a person carried. Their connection grew slowly, carefully, like something fragile that neither wanted to scare away. Emily began stopping by the garage more often, sometimes officially, sometimes not. She brought coffee once, then twice. Daniel found himself looking forward to those moments, not because they promised romance, but because they reminded him that he was still seen. When Emily finally met Noah, it was at a park on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that felt borrowed from a better life. She watched Daniel chase his son across the grass, laughing despite the lines of fatigue etched into his face. She saw the way Noah looked at his father, with complete trust, and something inside her settled into certainty. This was not a man defined by what he lacked, but by what he gave, endlessly, quietly. Life did not suddenly become easy. Bills still arrived. Exhaustion still lingered. There were nights when Daniel questioned whether he deserved happiness at all, whether opening his heart again would risk breaking what little stability he had built. Emily faced her own doubts, her own fear of blending worlds that demanded different versions of herself. But they moved forward together, one small step at a time, learning how to support without rescuing, how to love without erasing the past. The turning point came when the garage announced layoffs, and Daniel's name was on the list. The old panic returned, sharp and familiar, but this time he did not face it alone. Emily helped him navigate resources, contacts, possibilities he had never had the energy to explore. Through a friend of hers, Daniel landed a position teaching vocational skills at a community center, a job that paid less at first but offered stability and purpose. He discovered a talent for teaching, for encouraging others who had been told too many times that they were disposable. Months later, as Daniel stood in front of a small class, watching his students succeed, he realized that his life had not been derailed, only rerouted. The ticket that once felt like a final blow had become an unlikely turning point, a crack through which light had entered. Emily remained by his side, not as a savior, but as a partner. Noah grew comfortable in her presence, his laughter returning in full color. Their home filled slowly with warmth again, with shared meals, with plans that extended beyond the next paycheck. As this story comes close to its end, pause for a moment and tell us in the comments what part of Daniel's journey felt closest to your own life. On a quiet evening years later, Daniel drove down the same stretch of road where the flashing lights had once stopped him. This time, there was no fear, no urgency, just the hum of a life rebuilt through patience and unexpected kindness. He understood now that sometimes the moments that feel like punishment are actually invitations, asking us to slow down, to be seen, to accept help when it appears in an unexpected uniform.